This is the Voyage Report podcast, where you get the scoop on travel. Now, the editor-in-chief of the Voyage Report, Mark Albert.
Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome. Today, we're going to take you inside one of the largest airport projects going on right now. You may have heard about it or seen it or even flown through it. Los Angeles International Airport, known to almost everyone as LAX, is now the world's fourth busiest in terms of passenger traffic, up from the seventh spot just a year ago, according to Airports Council International. And it's the second busiest in the United States. The West Coast Gateway is embarking on a $14 billion, that's billion with a B, dollar modernization plan that may affect you. Joining us to talk about it are two of the people at Los Angeles World Airports who are very familiar with the project. Keith Wilschetz, Deputy Executive Director for Operations and Emergency Management, and Charles Pannunzio, Public Relations Specialist. They're both talking to us via Skype from Los Angeles. We'll start with Keith, and Charles will join us a bit later. Keith, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
So most people absolutely dread moving. You've got to know this, right? All those boxes and the packing and the headaches. But you've got the mother of all moving days coming up. How are you going to handle it?
Well, that's very true. Most people don't experience a move like this one very often, but we've been preparing for this for a very long time, and for good reason. This is going to be a major disruption to LAX's operations, and it's taking place May 12th through the 17th. And we're going to be moving about a third of all of our airlines over that 5-day period. About 21 of our airlines are going to be moving. And it's really being done for one of our primary tenants, Delta Airlines. Delta is just a little constrained where they are right now. Right now, they're in terminals 5 and 6, and they're a bit constrained. So there's an opportunity for them to move to terminals 2 and 3 and have a little room to grow. And so I think it's going to be a great thing for Delta Airlines, certainly. But I think it's just going to be a little disruptive for our passengers. But if they work with us, I think we're going to get through it just fine.
Well, you mentioned this being a major disruption, but the fact that you have an airline that wants to grow and you have airlines that need new gates, I mean, that's kind of a good problem to have, right?
It is a great problem to have, and it's one that we are working very hard to stay ahead of. We have as you said earlier, the $14 billion landside access modernization program, which Roger Johnson will speak about. And that's going to be really a permanent solution to some of the constraints that we feel right now. And we're at the beginning stages of that. This really can be considered, this move in May can be considered the beginning of that program. And so there will be more disruptions coming up, but as I said, we've prepared long and hard for this, and I think we're going to get through it just fine.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts here. This will start on Friday, May 12th, I assume at night, and it's going to last until Tuesday, May 16th. You've got 3 main days and nights that you're moving there. Take us through that. What are we going to see? When's it going to happen? Hours, times?
Absolutely. So we want our passengers to experience as little disruption as possible. And so we're going to wait until the last aircraft operation, takeoff or landing, each night to begin a flurry of activity in the middle of the night. So by the morning, when flights resume, all of that activity will be paused. And we will give it a day for that activity to settle in and make sure that our passengers and our employees are settled in. So on the 12th, the night of the 12th, beginning at about 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning, we're going to have several airlines that are going to move: Allegiant, Boutique Air, Frontier, Sun Country, Virgin America, Virgin Australia, and Volaris are all going to move terminals. And some of Delta's operations are going to move the night of the 12th. And so when you come here on the 13th, you're going to have a different location for those airlines. Then on the night of the 14th, Avianca, Interjet, and Spirit are going to be moving. So anyone who's flying those airlines on that day can expect something different when they get to the airport on May 15th. And then the night of the 16th will be the last night. Air Canada, Hawaiian, JetBlue is going to be moving, and some of Southwest's flights, their international flights, are going to be moving from Terminal 1 over to our international terminal. So The idea is we're going to get a lot of work done behind the scenes those nights, and in the morning when our passengers arrive, they will see some differences. But we have worked very hard to put a plan together to make sure that that their impacts are minimal. Doesn't mean there's not going to be impacts. We're asking for our passengers to help us out on this. It is a major disruption, but there's a few things that they can do to make this a little bit easier. One of the things that we're asking our passengers to do during that week, and quite frankly, we'd always ask our passengers to do this, but particularly important that week is do some homework before you leave your house. So check in online if you can. And when you check in, it'll tell you what gate you're flying out of. We have 9 terminals at LAX, and your gate number will tell you what terminal you're flying from. So Terminal 2 has gates 20 through 29. Terminal 3 has 30 through 39. So look at what number your gate is. That will tell you which terminal that you're going to be in. So know that before you leave your home. Then we'd also ask you to leave a little early. We always ask our passengers to leave 2 hours early for a domestic flight, 3 hours early for an international flight, but we're asking you to add another hour onto it during that week. So if you're flying within the United States, we ask you to leave 3 hours before or get to the airport 3 hours before your flight time. If you're flying international, get to the airport 4 hours before your flight time. And that is so important because it really gives you a little extra margin. We've all been there where we're running late and we're afraid we're going to miss our flight, and any little disruption causes our stress level to skyrocket. We don't want that to happen. So leave a little early, give yourself a little elbow room, and so when unexpected things happen, and they will that week, it's going to be okay. And then the third thing we would ask is just bring your patience. When you get to the airport, expect the unexpected. When you come to the airport, you may be at the wrong terminal, which is okay. We have contingency plans in place for that. You may need to walk from one terminal to another. You may need to get bused from one terminal to another. And if you arrive a little early, then that's going to be okay. We worked very hard to try and make sure that we have everything in place. So if you do find yourself in the wrong place, that's all right. We will have ways that we can get you where you need to be. We're going to have a lot of extra staff here during that week. Delta is moving a lot of people from their Atlanta office here for that week just to help out the passengers. I think they call it their Peach Corps, them being, of course, based in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be here. We're going to have extra people here to help. We're going to have extra shuttle buses running. So bring your patience, and I think everything is going to be okay.
Keith, your title officially is Deputy Executive Director of Operations, but I think really your title here is Chief Conductor of this very delicate dance that's going to be going on. You mentioned Delta. The airline called this one of the largest terminal moves in aviation history. I mean, no pressure there, right?
Well, that's very true. We have never experienced anything like this, and as far as we can tell, no airport has ever attempted to move 21 airlines amongst their terminals over a 5-day period. So that explains why we have done so much advanced legwork on this to make it run as smoothly as we can.
And what's keeping you up at night about moving day?
You know, what's keeping me up at night is the things that we don't expect. I mean, we've tried to check off every box that we can think of. Anything that might happen, we're ahead of. But it's always the thing that you didn't expect that will cause the problems. And so, we're trying to make sure that our employees have the information they need, they have the authority they need to get through those unexpected things. But again, we'd ask our passengers to be patient and to expect those unexpected problems.
Well, and you mentioned that when travelers show up to the airport during these couple of days, they may find themselves at the wrong terminal. But as an LA native who's flown through LAX quite often, I have to say, if you find yourself in the wrong terminal and you have to go up in numbers, you simply walk out the door and you make a right, and you simply go
Absolutely.
around the horseshoe. And of course, if you have a lot of bags, that might be inconvenient, but you get a little bit of walking in, and none of the terminals are too far apart. So a good piece of advice there: you just walk out the door and you can walk. And if it's across the horseshoe traffic lanes there. There's sidewalks and or crosswalks, and you can simply cross the way there. What do you say, though, Keith, to passengers who may be listening to this or looking at this and saying, boy, I am avoiding LAX at all costs, making plans for other airports, transiting to other places, maybe not even coming through LA. What do you say to them?
Well, if they feel that that's in their best interest, that's fine. But don't be afraid to come to our airport that week. It will be disruptive. There's no question about that. But again, if you leave a little early, we'll make sure that you get to the place that you need to be. We have, as I said before, we have shuttle buses running. In fact, when you get to the airport that week, look for the neon green. We have
neon green.
Neon green. So we are going to have signs, extra signs that are out there to lead the way for people that are going to be neon green. A lot of our volunteers are going to have neon green vests on that say "Ask Me." Even the employees that don't have that, we have 10,000 travelers information brochures that we've printed out. So employees throughout the airport that interact with the passengers will have them available to give to our passengers to help them out. And then we're going to have a special shuttle bus running just between terminals 2, 3, 5, and 6, the 4 terminals that are most impacted here. And it's going to be neon green. I'm not saying it's pretty, but it will be effective. People will notice them. And so don't hesitate to come to the airport that week. Just expect that there will be some disruption.
In fact, you have a website where people can go to keep informed about all this, laxishappening.com. I've been noticing there have been a lot of updates on the project there. Are you going to keep posting updates here as we get closer to moving day?
Absolutely, we will. We'll be sending out emails to Delta will be sending out emails to many of its passengers. There will be updates posted nonstop. You can get us, as you said, on laxishappening.com. That will tell you everything you need to know, including which airlines will be at which terminal each day of that week. And so that will be helpful for you. We have our Twitter account is @FlyLAX Airport, and Instagram also @FlyLAX Airport, and then our hashtag LAX on the move. So we are doing everything we can to try to make sure that no one is going to come here without understanding what they're up against. We're working very hard to get the word out.
You mentioned terminals 2, 3, 5, and 6 for that special shuttle bus, and those are the terminals where Delta has said that at some points in this whole moving process, it will actually have flights departing from 4 different terminals. Has that ever happened at LAX before, where you had an airline in 4 terminals at once?
No, it has not. And so we understand the confusion that can bring. And so, we do have those shuttles. If you get to the wrong terminal, we can get you on and as you said before, you can always walk if you're up to walking. But if you don't feel like doing that, hop on the shuttle bus and take that on the land side. If you happen to get through security and then find yourself in the wrong terminal, that's okay too. We're actually that week going to be running shuttles on the secure air side that will take you from the terminal that you're in to the terminal that you want to be. And so, again, we've tried to figure out every contingency. And so don't hesitate to come to LAX that week. Just be prepared for some unexpected challenges.
Now, sometimes people do want to reach out, whether it be on social media or sending a comment. Maybe they have a criticism or a critique or something just doesn't go right and they want to vent or have someone listen to their 2 cents. How can they do that during this time period? Do you have a special email set up, or should they interact with you via social media?
They can certainly interact via social media, and also just go on our regular website, lawa.org, and there is a place there that you can certainly send us your comments, and we welcome that. I get those comments all the time from passengers. Not all of them are favorable, but that's quite all right. We need to understand what our passengers are experiencing so that we can make it better next time.
Keith, before I let you go, I just have to ask you, you must be one of the world's best jugglers, because I've noticed that right in the midst of this moving day, you've actually got a brand new VIP terminal opening up here for VIP celebrities, anyone wanting to pay a couple $1,000s to have this private screening, first of its kind in the country. I think that opens May 15th. Were you in charge of scheduling that?
No, no. I think when that was scheduled, none of us were really thinking about the impacts. But in many ways, that's going to be a good thing. We do have a lot of celebrities come through this airport, as you can understand, and that causes disruptions of its own kind. And we just don't need that this week particularly. And so this will actually be a good chance to get that distraction out of our terminals. And let us be distracted by all the other things that we have going on that week.
And listeners, if you want to skip all of the hassle, I think for a $7,500 a year membership and up to $3,000 per trip for a family of four, you can go right to this VIP terminal starting May 15th, right?
Absolutely.
Keith Wilschetz is the Deputy Executive Director who is handling this massive moving day, one of the largest terminal relocation moves in aviation history. Keith, thank you so much for the update and good luck.
It's my pleasure, Mark. Thank you very much.
And joining us now, Charles Pannunzio, Public Relations Specialist. Charles, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark.
So, Charles, in a recent news release, I noticed that the president of the Los Angeles World Airports Commission said this is nothing short of a transformation of the airport. That's what he said, transformation. That sounds pretty big. What's the grand plan?
Well, there's so much going on out here, and the main thing that we want to do is improve the guest experience. So we're trying to do that through improvements inside the terminals. We're trying to do that with a long-range project to get the traffic under control outside the terminals. There's a lot going on at LAX.
Now, this is a $14 billion plan in all. What are you doing for that money?
Well, one of the big parts of it, about $8.5 billion of it, involves work in the terminals, including the construction of a new midfield satellite concourse, which will connect to the Tom Bradley International Terminal and give us another 12 gates there. We've had a bit of a gate crunch. That's going to help us handle that a lot better by having a little more space to take care of things such as when gates are out due to construction, as we are doing things on the airfield. We'll have that space for planes to hook up at the new terminal, at the new concourse. That's going to open at the end of 2019. Also, renovations inside just about every terminal, either completed or in process. United is doing a project over at Terminal 7 and 8 that is about $573 million in work. Southwest is doing a $515 million project at Terminal 1. And the biggie, the one that sort of is leading to our LAX terminal shuffle that we have coming up next month,
moving day,
or later this month,
yeah,
is Delta, which between the money they've already spent to sort of help everybody else in the relocation, and then the work that they will actually do to terminals 2 and 3, we're talking close to $1.9 billion there.
And you mentioned that midfield satellite concourse, and I think you're also adding gates to handle the biggest planes out there, the 747-8 and the Airbus A380, the double-decker.
That's correct. 2 of the 12 gates at the MSC are going to have the ability to handle those. They call them Group 6 aircraft. And actually, all 12 gates will be able to handle the Group 5. So we'll still have plenty of space for the wide-body aircraft that aren't quite the largest, but still the ones that are being used for international and transcontinental trips.
Listeners, there are 742 daily nonstop flights to 101 cities in the U.S. from LAX. And in an average week, get this, flights from LAX go to 42 countries on 64 commercial carriers. And there were 81 million passengers fly through LAX last year. I'm sure a lot of you felt that as well. So, Charles, a third more than just 5 years ago. Is that why this big project is needed?
That's among the reasons. I mean, and if you think about it, I know in the intro you were talking about us now being the second largest or busiest airport in the U.S. We're just behind Atlanta. And Atlanta has a lot of connecting traffic. So when you get down to the point of people trying to get to the airport, through the airport, and then returning and get out of the airport, we're really talking about a lot of people coming through this airport.
Absolutely. Now, when you have a lot of people and you have a big project and you have a lot of noise, you're going to get some complaints. And I noticed a Hollywood Reporter article last year with the headline, "The Agony of LAX," and what's being done about it. Listeners, if you go and look at it, there's an editorial cartoon there that changed those iconic LAX letters that tower at the entrance to LAX, and they changed it to, instead of LAX, SUX, sucks. So is trying to reduce those complaints part of this? I mean, obviously you have to be sensitive to the way customers and residents and neighbors feel, right?
Oh, absolutely. And again, improving the guest experience is our number one objective here. The long-term project that gets mentioned that we've been talking about, our landside access modernization program, is a proposal to build a consolidated rent-a-car center, a 2.25-mile elevated train that would connect that to our central terminal and really, really help us tackle the traffic issues that we're facing right now.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I actually want to talk about that. I'm from LA, as our listeners might know. And the one amenity that LAX simply has not had that disappoints a lot of people is the lack of a train station, a public train station at the airport. You've got other airports, Washington, D.C., Reagan, Denver, Chicago, where you can just take the public light rail system there. But now Los Angeles is expanding its Metro light rail system. They've done a great job in the past, Metrolink, etc. And yet still today you can't take a train directly to the airport. But this people mover you're talking about, along with the new Metro Crenshaw LAX line, that's going to fix that, right?
That's correct, Mark. And it's one of those things right now, if you come to the airport on Metro, we have a shuttle bus, a free service that goes from the LAX Imperial Station, but that's still having to leave the train to get on a bus. What we're planning to do with the Landside Access Modernization Program, there are 3 stops on the people mover outside of the central terminal area, one of them being the Consolidated Rent-A-Car Center. But another one, which is right now called the Intermodal Transportation Facility East, is co-located with a new station that Metro is planning to build on that LAX Crenshaw connector. That station would be at 96th Street. So anybody that would be taking Metro, either the Green Line or the new LAX Crenshaw connector, would go up one level. They would be able to get on our people mover and take our people mover the rest of the way into the airport.
Talking about relieving traffic, we all know if you go through LAX, if you've ever dropped somebody off at LAX, or you've ever gone to pick somebody up, that U-shaped roadway in front of all the 9 terminals, that can just be an absolute traffic jam. So what are you doing to fix that?
Well, and again, as part of this LAMP project, the Landside Access Modernization Program, when you think about the shuttles that we have in the terminal right now, in the central terminal area, you're talking about a lot of rent-a-car shuttles, And by having the Consolidated Rent-A-Car Center at the other end of the rail of our elevated train, we're going to take out as much as 40% of the traffic that's currently in the horseshoe. Now, that also includes such things as hotel shuttles and the smart shuttle type services, the shared ride vans, which we'll ask them to start picking up at our Intermodal Transportation Facility West, which again allows people to then take our rail the rest of the way into the airport. The rail that we're looking at right now, the proposal would be a 10-minute ride from that Consolidated Rent-A-Car Center all the way to the last stop, which would be the Tom Bradley International Terminal. And there would be trains every 2 to 3 minutes. So it would be a very reliable way to get in and out of the CTA.
So, Charles, this sounds very exciting. This is obviously going to take several years. So give me a read on this. If I'm a flyer, if I'm a traveler, what's the hassle factor going to be for the next couple of years?
There will be obviously some short-term pain for this long-term gain. We are going to do our best to make sure that we mitigate that where possible. And just ask people, again, kind of the things that we always talk about, especially at holiday time, with arrival of 2 hours early for a domestic flight, 3 hours early for an international flight. One of the things that, with the LAMP project, what we've been talking about is we're doing so many things inside our terminals, and the Tom Bradley International Terminal is beautiful. But when people are kind of in a rush to get here to the airport and just get on their plane and get out of here, they don't have the opportunity to really enjoy a lot of the amenities that we've been adding to the airport. So if they're take a little bit of the stress factor out, get to the airport a little early, and enjoy those amenities. If the lines are moving, then they'll certainly have a better experience to start their trip than kind of rushing around.
You mentioned amenities and improving the customer experience, and I'm always curious how closely airports in particular pay attention to customer surveys, etc. I saw the Skytrax survey of travelers last year, and I think it ranked LAX 91st. Now, that's better than it was the year prior, but how closely do you look at those surveys when people fill out the comment card or they take part in those surveys by third-party companies? How much do you integrate that into your plans for the future?
Actually, it's Mark, it's interesting that you mentioned the Skytrax survey because we went from 98 to 91 to actually 86 in the one that's coming out now. I think that was the number.
Are you giving us an exclusive peek here, Charles?
No, I think that's out there.
Oh, it's out. Congratulations.
Yeah, I think it is. And that jump from 91st to 86 also made us number 10 in terms of the biggest jump. So we're in the top 10 of the most improved airports going into this year. So we kind of feel like that's part of paying more attention to the guest experience. And we want to continue that rise up the charts. It's definitely something that is important to the folks that run this airport to make sure that people are enjoying their opportunity to get their travel started and what we can do to help that.
Charles, we covered a hearing at voyagereport.com in March here on Capitol Hill where there were executives from several airports around the country, and they were testifying about this massive investment challenge they said exists at U.S. airports and that more funding is needed. We've seen LaGuardia just start a massive project. D.C.'s Reagan National is launching a very ambitious project. I'm curious how bad the funding gap is, and how is this project being paid for?
Well, this project's being paid for in several different ways. Of course, we are actually a department of the city of Los Angeles, but we get no general tax fund money. We are responsible for our own budget. So anything that happens out here is funded by things like the passenger facility charge that you're speaking of, like concessions fees, parking fees, landing fees. In the terms of the Consolidated Rent-A-Car Center, they have been collecting money for that purpose on the rental cars here for several years, and that will be going towards building that Consolidated Rent-A-Car Center. The two big pieces of the project, the automated people mover and that Consolidated Rent-A-Car Center, are going to be built actually as public-private partnerships, which will also help with the funding on the front end, and we will be paying back and then eventually acquiring those resources.
Do you think there is a funding gap? I know some airport executives would love to be able to increase that fee on tickets to fund long-term capital projects at airports. Do you have that sort of cash crunch there at LA?
That's actually not for me really to speak to, but I know that our CEO, Deborah Flint, was among the folks that have been going to Washington to speak to them about that passenger facility charge.
Let's talk about what's going on there as far as passengers go. If you look at Seattle, for example, Alaska dominates. Obviously, Delta's trying to get some inroads there, but Alaska Airlines dominates. In Dallas, of course, it's American, Chicago, United, Minneapolis, where I used to work, Delta, Atlanta Delta as well. But in LA, correct me if I'm wrong here, Charles, but there really isn't a dominant carrier. I sort of feel as though the last couple of years the airlines have been fighting amongst each other to add gates, add routes, add planes, upgauge to larger aircraft. It's sort of a competition, isn't it?
And that's one of the things that we do like about the situation we're in here at LAX is the fact that we have, and they're very cooperative airline partners, but at the same time, we have a lot of them that each have a smaller piece of the pie than maybe one of those airports that you mentioned that is dominated by somebody. We think it offers folks that are here flexibility. It offers good opportunities to find good fares, that sort of thing.
We talked to Keith about this big moving day that's coming up, and he's handling that. I told him that he must be a really good juggler to be able to juggle all these things at once. Are there going to be these sort of red letter days, these landmark days coming up here in the future? You've got the moving day coming up here in May. Is there any other relocations or big dates that travelers, flyers need to be aware of? For example, are you closing the horseshoe to traffic at a certain date or whatnot? Anything we should put on our calendars, Charles?
There's nothing like that really on the horizon, but once again, of course, coming out of the Delta moves, the airline relocations that we have coming up, you're looking at the start of the summer travel season. It was very busy for us last year. We anticipate it being very busy once again. So we just, I know that cliche is pack your patience, but that's the thing. If you can get here a little early, a little less stress, it certainly helps kick off your trip, whether it's for pleasure or business, a lot better than kind of rushing around.
So, Charles, what do you say to the travelers out there that are listening to this and they're thinking, oh, my goodness, this is going to be so great to fly through in 2025 or 2026, and they may want to stay away for the next couple of years, hearing all of these big projects? What would you advise those people? What would you tell them?
Again, just be cognizant of what's going on out here. We have a monthly news release that we put out that sort of updates what's going on construction-wise on the roads and also in the terminals. So that's a good way to kind of keep an eye on what's going on and just be cognizant of what's going on.
You've got a website, laxishappening.com. It has been updating pretty frequently. I suppose, is that your handiwork?
I am among the folks that works on that website, absolutely. So coming up when we were talking about the terminal shuffle in the middle of May, we're actually going to be live overnight during those 3 nights, tweeting and updating the website with the latest on the maps to make sure that folks know each morning which airline is where and that the airlines have completed their moves.
Charles, you were just simply jealous of all the broadcast journalists that have to get up at 2 a.m. for the morning show, right? You just wanted to be part of it all, part of that excitement?
Well, it's something to do on a what do you call overnight shift? Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll be doing all 3, right? Because there are 3 overnight shifts, right?
That is correct. The first one will be the Friday night, the 12th of May into the 13th. And one of the things Keith mentioned, and I'll reiterate that too, is they really built this schedule well. So what will happen on the morning of the 13th is everybody will hopefully be in their space and ready to go, and their IT will work, and their jet bridges will match up, and their ground service equipment will be there. But they have about a day and a half window that if something isn't quite right, they've got the time to go ahead and get that handled before the next set of airlines is supposed to move.
Charles Pannunzio, Public Relations Specialist at Los Angeles World Airports. We wish you the best of luck, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Mark.
And our thanks to Keith Wilschetz earlier for joining us as well. Listeners, have you experienced the changes at LAX? Will you steer clear in May, or will you brave through it? Let us know by rating this podcast, giving us a review, and sharing it on social media. We have guests every week talking about travel news and trends, so be sure to subscribe to our podcast. We'd sure appreciate your review. It helps bring more awareness to our journalism and our original content. And if you have an idea for our future guests on our podcast, please reach out at voyagereport.com and let us know. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Mark Albert. Bon voyage.
You've been listening to the Voyage Report podcast. Get the scoop on travel at voyagereport.com.